Good morning, everyone. I thought this comic was apropos to start our show today, and it's got a guy on the left-hand side, and he represents the public, and he says, "Hey, Mr. Government Official, what's going on under there?" And then the government official is he's got a big coat that says "Cloak of Secrecy," and his single head says, "Trust me, you don't need to know." And there's a bunch of money on the ground, and bills, and laws, and a bunch of feet under this giant coat. And I think that it's funny because kind of feels like that a lot of the time, doesn't it? And Justin Trudeau says, and don't worry, I'll spare you this one. He says, the Liberal Party has consistently raised the bar on openness and transparency. Oh, I know. I don't like listening to him. We are going to listen to him in a minute, though. But first, here is Pierre Poilievre talking about how we need an anti-corruption committee because, all the times the Liberals have been open and transparent about their misappropriation of funds or, giving money to people who also paid Justin Trudeau's family a lot of money, like $500,000, et cetera, and more. But here's Mr. Poilievre. Here you go.
The Liberals claim that the WE scandal could distract Parliament from the pandemic response. This is a perfect solution to that. We propose that the Finance Committee do finance work, that the Ethics Committee continue its review of privacy legislation, that all the other committees do the policy work that they are set up to do, while a new and temporary committee that is devoted to fighting corruption be established to get to the truth in the WE scandal.
So do you anticipate that this...
So we're so open and transparent that we need an anti-corruption temporary committee to get to the bottom of the WE scandal. And the follow-up question is, do you expect the other scandals will be within the scope? And he says, yeah, I'll let you. Here, let's listen.
Committee would only look at the WE scandal, or do you see it would have a role beyond the WE scandal, and potentially what kind of other issues could it look into if you do have a view of it down the line?
Well, I think that this new anti-corruption committee could get to the bottom of the WE scandal, but other abuses and corruption that have occurred in response to the COVID-19 pandemic would also be realistically within the realm of study for a committee like this.
Thank you.
I think that it's folly for Mr. Poilievre to assume that, obviously that would be included, right? All the other corruption, because the Liberals haven't done that. They filibustered, right? They're in a minority on the government panel, on the committee there, and they're filibustering the committee. Here's Charlie Angus saying, please stop filibustering. Please stop.
I think that we have an obligation to tell Canadians that when money is going to go out to help them, that it is focused on helping them and not helping friends of the Prime Minister. We've had a series of incidents happen. For example, David McNaughton, top Liberal insider who represents, I think, a company that's Palantir's massive surveillance company with a horrific human rights track record, who just got walking into all the senior levels of the Liberal government, right up to the Deputy Prime Minister, because he was a Liberal. So we need to address how the spending's happening to make sure it's being done in the Canadian interest. So let's just do it at one committee, because we've got four tripping over each other right now. This would free up, right. But we would need the Liberals to be willing to stop filibustering, stop blocking, and stop blocking the documents. I think that
please stop. Please stop blocking the documents. We need your cooperation, you Liberals. No, that's why this holding the Liberals accountable is the only way it can be done is through bringing the government down and sending them to the public to be judged. Essentially, I don't think Aaron O'Toole's any better, and I think probably Trudeau would win maybe more seats. Who knows? Maybe the NDP would be irrelevant, and he would just have a majority, and he wouldn't need to whip the NDP caucus, right, Charlie Angus? Right? A new committee. No, right? If you need the Liberals' cooperation to get this done, it's not going to happen. Sorry. Spoiler alert for the next year and a half of your maddeningly inappropriate way to find Justin Trudeau, or to hold Justin Trudeau to account, because it's not going to happen, right? And Mr. Poilievre, I think, is using this as an opportunity to maybe investigate this situation, but this is not the right avenue, in my opinion. And maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but I don't think this is the right avenue to investigate this situation. If there's a crime been committed, then refer it to the RCMP. If it's a political thing in nature, you're not going to get the agreement from these people. And yeah, you need those documents. Why? If it's legal, then go legal, right? I don't think that this is going to work. The committee has already been shown to be an ineffective way. So at this point in time, I would not back down from using the Finance Committee. There's been 2 meetings where the Liberals have filibustered. Have they successfully filibustered to a point now where the Conservatives and the NDP are conceding, okay, fine, we'll set up a whole new committee to have the whole conversation over again? Give the documents that were promised unredacted. Don't back down. Don't back down. Don't take this out of the Finance Committee. Like, you're losing if you do this. You lose if you do this. And I mean, I think they've lost, right? Like, this is the announcement of this is the suggestion. The Liberals are going to lap it up. Who knows? Maybe it was the idea of the PMO in the first place. Give it to Angus, give it to Poilievre. Poilievre says, oh, this is a way we can have some theater and hold them accountable. It's not going to hold them accountable. Continue what you're doing. Keep finance focused. Here's Kenny. And Jason Kenney is talking about how we're not going to enforce our way out of COVID. Alberta's approach is to focus on the broader health of society, physical, mental, social, and economic, by encouraging personal responsibility rather than micromanaging people's lives. Jason Kenney, you're talking some sense. I don't know what to make of Jason Kenney. The United Conservative Party, what he says about immigration, there are big concerns about Kenney, but I don't know what to make of this, especially within this context. Now, I hummed and hawed about showing this report this morning. I saw it this morning. This is the first time it was posted at 2 o'clock this morning. I didn't see it at 2 o'clock. I'm not up then. I get up at 5:30. But the point of this is an unconfirmed leak, nameless, right? I don't like reporting about this stuff. However, I think that it's out there, and I'm going to report on this. It's lpcleaker@protonmail.com, right? Like, there's so many red flags. So take this with a grain of salt. There's stuff that I think in here is plausible. There's stuff in here that I think is not possible to plan at this point in time, and that's in the red. Link is in the description. I archived this because I thought this is going to either be removed or whatever. But I'll go through it again. Please, grain of salt. This is the Canadian Report website. And the title is this leaked info really Trudeau's crazy COVID plan for 2021? You decide. So really, you decide. I have some concerns and issues with this. I will let you know what those are. Here we go. It says, I'm a committee member within the Liberal Party of Canada. I sit within several committee groups, but the information I'm providing is originating from the Strategic Planning Committee, which is steered by the PMO. Okay, so the first things first, I tried to find a list of people who are on the Strategic Planning Committee because I was going to email them and say, hey, like, have you seen this? What do you think about this? Is there any truth into this? Like, I wanted to do that, right? Because that's kind of what I do. And I couldn't find a list of the people in the Strategic Planning Committee. So maybe my Google foo was off. I was looking Strategic Planning Committee, PMO, Strategic Planning Committee, Government of Canada, Strategic Planning Committee, all sorts of kind of variations on that. And it took me to all sorts of pages, some of which had Government of Canada committees on them, but some of them didn't. It was company websites with strategic plans and stuff. Other websites had vignettes and like diagrams and things, circles and in circles, like this is what the plan is. So the long story there is that I couldn't find it. So I'd love to find the group of people who this person belongs to. She says that 30% of them are hesitant about the plan. But anyway, the roadmap. Okay, I'll read this. I need to start off by saying that I'm not happy about doing this, but I have to. As a Canadian, and more importantly, as a parent who wants a better future, not only for my children, but for our other children as well. The other reason I'm doing this is that because roughly 30% of the committee members are not pleased with the direction this will take Canada, but our opinions have been ignored, and they plan on moving forward with their goals. They also have made it clear that nothing will stop the planned outcomes. The roadmap and aim was set out by the PMO, Prime Minister's Office, and is as follows. Phase in a secondary lockdown, restrictions on a rolling basis, starting with major metropolitan areas first, and expanding outward, expected by November 2020, ahead of schedule. Rush the acquisition or construction of isolation facilities across every province and territory, expected by December 2020. Randy Hillier's been talking about that and has been shut down in the Ontario legislature, and there have been requisitions by the Government of Canada looking for people to build and manage such locations, and I've talked about that in the past as well. You can check CanadaPoly.com for links to that kind of stuff, and Google as well. Daily new cases of COVID-19 will surge beyond capacity of testing, including increases in COVID-related deaths following the same growth curves expected by the end of November 2020. Okay, so the surge beyond capacity of testing has already happened, and Canada has been sending tests down to Florida to get caught up on tests, etc. The expected surge of cases cases has not happened in Ontario, and it's expected by the end of November 2020. Wait till we're going to talk about Doug Ford in just a minute. Like he's telling people that this is a big deal and a big problem, blah, blah, blah. So buckle up. Like there are a lot of markers here that are happening in real time. So plausible? Maybe. We get to a point where it becomes less, but okay. Complete and total secondary lockdown, much stricter than the first and second rolling phase restrictions, expected by the end of December 2020, early January 2021. At this point, I think we're getting too far out, right? At this point, we haven't seen a secondary lockdown in Ontario. We've seen it in Quebec, and we've seen people being restricted in their movements in Quebec and New Brunswick as well. We've seen that, but not in Ontario. So, and I'm not saying that we couldn't see it in Ontario, but we haven't seen it yet. So end of December, early January 21, reform and expansion of the unemployment program to be transitioned into the Universal Basic Income program, expected by Q1 2021. I've got a news article to show you about that. Experts weighing in on that. Projected COVID-19 mutation and or co-infection with secondary virus referred to as COVID-21, leading to a third wave with much higher mortality rate and higher rate of infection expected by February 2021. I'm skeptical of that one. If they call it COVID-21, that belays. I think that just says like there's a plan here. And really, you could say that it's the year, but no, I don't think so. Leading to a third wave, much higher mortality rate and higher rate of infection expected by February 2021. I'm interested with how they're going to manufacture this. They figured out how to manufacture cases. Do they know how to manufacture deaths and attribute that to COVID? They would need buy-in. They would need buy-in from the public for this, right? A third wave, people would need to be afraid, right? And especially the mortality rate. I don't know how they control that, right? So if they're planning for a higher mortality rate, I don't know how you can plan for a higher mortality rate. You can say, oh, let's plan for a higher mortality rate, but I don't know how you can make that happen. And like, what is the data they're using to drive this higher mortality rate? I would be interested to see it, right? If this is a steering committee plan and they're planning for a higher mortality rate, what is indicating that people are going to start dying of this, right? Daily new cases of COVID, hospitalizations, and COVID-19 related deaths will exceed medical care facilities capacity expected between Q1 and Q2, so up to June 2021. And deaths will exceed medical care facilities capacity at the same time. Enhanced lockdown restrictions, referred to as third lockdown, will be implemented. Full travel restrictions will be imposed, including inter-province and intercity, expected summer of 2021. I think we're getting into not plausible at this point. You can't plan for that yet because the public wouldn't consent to that, right? Like that's not. If they said you can't go to Kitchener from Guelph, or if you can't go to Waterloo from Cambridge, right? Like some people live in Cambridge and go to Waterloo, right? Oh, you need papers, please, right? I don't know. We've seen it in Australia, but I haven't seen it here, right? Transitioning of individuals into the Universal Basic Income program expected mid Q2 2021. This requires the lockdown. No lockdown, jobs continue, and people don't need UBI. Lockdowns happening, then yeah, people run out of money at this point, right? Projected supply chain breakdowns, inventory shortage, large economic instability expected late Q2 2021. Do they know something we don't? Doug Ford continually says he's bringing us all the information that they've got. We maintain the supply chain since March. I don't see any reason for a breakdown now, unless people can't go to work, right? Why would the supply chain break down? Why inventory shortages? Is something else happening? Back to this. Development of military personnel into major metropolitan areas, as well as all major roadways, to establish travel checkpoints, restrict travel and movement, provide logistical support to the area, expected by Q3 2021. What we're told was in order to offset what was essentially an economic collapse on an international scale, that the federal government was going to offer Canadians total debt relief. This is how it works. The federal government will offer to eliminate all personal debts, mortgage loans, credit cards, with all funding will be provided to Canada by the International Monetary Fund under what will become known as the World Debt Reset Program. In exchange for acceptance of this total debt forgiveness, the individual would forfeit ownership of any and all property and all assets forever. The individual would also have to agree to partake in the COVID-19 and 21 vaccination schedule, which would provide the individual with unrestricted travel and unrestricted living, even under a full lockdown, though the use of photo identification referred to as Canada's Health Pass. Committee members asked who would become the owner of the forfeited property and assets in that scenario, and what would happen to lenders or financial institutions. We were told that the World Debt Reset Program will handle all of the details. Several committee members also questioned what would happen to individuals if they refused to participate in the World Debt Reset Program or the health pass or the vaccination schedule. And the answer we got was very troubling. Essentially, we were told it was our duty to make sure we came up with a plan to ensure that would never happen. We were told that it was in individuals' best interest to participate. When several committee members pushed relentlessly to get an answer, we were told that those who refused would first live under the lockdown restrictions indefinitely, and that over a short period of time, as more Canadians transitioned into the debt forgiveness program, the ones who refused to participate would be deemed a public safety risk and would be relocated to isolation facilities. Once in the facilities, they would be given two options: participate in the debt forgiveness program and be released, or stay indefinitely in the isolation facility until the classification of a serious under the classification of a serious public health risk and have all assets seized. So again, and this was published October 14th, so there's a lot to consider there, a lot to take with a grain of salt, not to just take as factual, not as truth, but as something that somebody put out there, right? Unnamed, anonymous source. But we're seeing some of it, and those are the best ways to package something like this, right? Like we've seen half of this, and then as soon as they get into next year, it's like, I don't know, right? So be skeptical, right? But at the same time, be aware of what's being posted. I really hesitated not hesitated, but hummed and hawed about sharing this. I think it's worthwhile. It's worth a discussion anyway. And if it's false, then, I mean, people can denounce it, right? The Liberals could denounce it, say, no, there's no committee like that. There's no anything like that. And if it's true, well, I mean, if it's true, email me. I'm interested. 30% of you, email me. I'm interested. Here is CTV News reporting, and this is October 13th. Today is October 14th. Pandemic exposes need for basic income project, expert says. Oh, the experts weighing in, right? Here's Doug Ford says he's praying the new restrictions won't have to be expanded to other parts of Ontario. Right? After reading all of this and reading through, the lockdowns that are happening in Toronto and then being threatened to go wider, they're on schedule, aren't they? Isn't that interesting? So could be a leak, could just be crazy conspiracy theories. Take it with a grain of salt. Here is 680 News reporting Premier Doug Ford put COVID-19 anti-maskers and deniers on blast Tuesday. I don't know what on blast means. Telling them to leave the province if they don't believe the virus is real. I'm coming up here and telling you what I know through the facts, says Doug Ford. Here he is. Now, I've got some things to show you and things to tell you about Doug Ford's little speech here. It's a minute 25. We'll listen to little parts of it, and I'll talk about it after. Here we go.
Have the anti-maskers showing up to my house again, flying the flag upside down, and that's disturbing to say the least. You don't like our country. You want to disrespect the people of this country and the flag. Get going, take off, leave. Find another place you can fly your flag upside down. Number two.
Take off, eh? Fly your flag upside down, take off. Here's the Canada.ca Canadian Heritage. It says the national flag of Canada, whether it be cloth, paper, or made of some other fabric or material, should never be flown upside down except as a signal of distress in instances of extreme danger to life. So if people are flying the flag upside down, they're doing it in a show of concern, Doug Ford. They're not doing it as a show of we don't like Canada or we don't like Ontario. They're saying, through flag, that we feel that Ontario is in danger and they're concerned, and not wearing a mask is just following the evidence, sir. Like, really, it's just following the evidence. And the fact that you're ignoring it is really interesting. Here's the number two. He's talking about there's no hidden agenda. I don't know.
Two, elected officials. You're talking the premier. There's no hidden agenda. Not from me, not from any of my ministers, no one. It's sheer facts. What I get from the chief medical officer, I will put it right on the table, good, bad, or ugly. And the people that are saying this, I don't even know where they're getting this from. This is real as I'm standing here. You can be a denier, you can be an anti-masker, you can do whatever. This is a democratic country. You can say what you want. But I'm just coming up here and telling you what I know.
The anti-masker and denier language is to isolate and make people into others, dehumanize them. It's done because, you and I would never put people in danger, but those anti-maskers, right? Those evil anti-vaxxers or those anti-maskers or whatever. And when somebody in public office has to tell you that it's real, probably there's a reason they're saying that.
Let's start with the fact that climate change is real, and it is a challenge.
And people clap yes. And Barack Obama used to say that too. 99% of the scientists agree with me. Which scientists, Mr. Obama? So yeah, having him say it's real, it doesn't make me believe you, Doug. It doesn't make me believe you. And trying to use dehumanizing language to describe people who are concerned about the draconian lockdown rules, the fact that you're ignoring HCQ, the fact that you're ignoring the WHO saying that lockdowns don't work and shouldn't be used, the fact that you are going back to lockdowns for some strange reason, I don't know. There's a lot of things to be concerned about. And there are people who are angry with you, Doug, people who voted for you who are angry with you. So you should pay attention or continue to ignore them because they will replace you.
Through the facts of the chief medical officer, and I can assure you, our medical team, it's not one person or two or five. It's probably 100 or 200 throwing their advice in. And then Dr. Williams, Dr. Brown, Dr. Yaffe, Dr. Dirk, they all come up and they deliver the message too. I'm going to repeat this again. There is no agenda. I'm the last guy in the world that would put up with that. It just wouldn't happen under my watch.
Maybe you don't know. Maybe you don't know. I'll speculate. Maybe you are completely innocent, but that would mean you're not the sharpest tool in the shed there, Doug. But if you don't know, you should maybe look into the publicly available data. I'll go through some of it. Here is Brett Wilson. He says, she says, Candace Malcolm says, the media blare out the fact that new cases are up 25% from the height of the pandemic, but ignore the fact that testing is up 800%, Doug. This is a lie by omission. It's alarmism. And it should be ignored. Yeah, the cases may be up 25%, but the testing's up 800%. We're testing a whole lot more people and finding a little bit of virus. This is Liverpool. I think this is a party in locked down England. They've lost control. Nigel Farage says Boris has lost control. And yeah, yep. At some point, people break and they'll say, no, we don't believe you. We don't believe you. Here's the Spectator. This is Dr. Matt Strauss, and I follow him. He says, a medic's case against another lockdown. Here's more science there, Dougie. It says, in my practice, I prescribe medications like erythromycin. No, doesn't matter. To lower cholesterol or warfarin to thin the blood because international randomized double-blind control trials have proven that their benefit far outweighs the risk. If I were to prescribe thalidomide, I've got it wrong, which causes birth defects for morning sickness, or fen-phen, which causes heart problems for weight loss, that would be unethical malpractice and the risks outweighing their benefits. Generally, prescriptions for such medications are not allowed because regulatory bodies like Food and Drug Administration in the US or the MHRA in the UK take them off the market once their disproportionate risk becomes clear. If lockdowns were a prescription drug for COVID-19 treatment, the FDA would never have approved it. The seminal Imperial College London paper and other mathematical models like it were used to justify their use, but clinicians would never prescribe a drug or propose a surgery based on such modeling. The now publicized failure of these models to accurately predict COVID-19 outcomes proved the result. Luckily, we no longer have to talk about mathematical models. We have 7 months of real-world data to look at. In August, The Lancet published an analysis from data from 50 countries. The research found that full lockdowns were not associated with decreased mortality from COVID-19. These are hard outcome data. Reality cannot be waved away with theories or projections. So much for the purported benefits. What about the risks? We cannot answer this question fully because a worldwide lockdown experiment has never been run before. However, evidence from the harms of lockdown is now piling up. In the US, homicides are up 50% compared to last summer. In France, domestic violence calls are up 30%. In Canada, 3 times more people are contemplating suicide compared to last year, and in British Columbia, overdose deaths have tripled from pre-pandemic levels. Lockdowns don't work. It's clear as day. It's very, very obvious. If you look, here's another one, National Post. Now, this one I don't like because it uses modeling. It's just using modeling, and they go through all sorts of different models. The models say, yeah, lockdowns don't work too, but I don't like using modeling to prove because we've got data. We can look at what's happened. We don't have to model into the future. Here's Anthony Fury, I believe, Anthony. Yeah. It says Ontario tracking lower than lowest COVID-19 projections. There's an article on it. I'm not going to read it. I'll just show you a picture. Here's the model. Here's what the model says. And the blue, that's what we're actually doing, right? So we're way, way under the low scenario. And still Doug Ford's locking us down in Toronto and Ottawa. Not in Peel. Not fair. Not appropriate. And I've said that the only way to fight this is to have businesses fight back themselves. And well, here is the Ottawa business. Oh my goodness. The OCOBIA has a long, but they're a business association essentially. And it says Watson endorses provincial decision to temporarily pinch Ottawa's economy because of rising COVID-19 cases. And then very shortly after, the coalition of 6,200 Ottawa businesses demands data from province to justify the closures. And then the mayor backs down. Jim Watson tells Radio Christie he'll support the coalition of businesses, calling the province on the data that justifies the new lockdown, right? So that's a bit of a flip-flop from the mayor's first stance, right? First, he says, yes, we can definitely pinch those businesses, no problems. And then the 6,200 businesses say, no, we want the data. And then he says, oh yeah, we'll back those guys up. Here it is. Coalition of 6,200 businesses demand data from province to justify closures. An open letter signed by a coalition that represents more than 6,200 businesses in the capital is demanding the Ontario government produce the data that justifies the new COVID-19 restrictions that were put in place on the weekend. I scroll down. In an open letter, Mark Kaluski, sorry if I got that wrong, chair of the Ottawa Coalition of Business Improvement Areas, OCOBIA, called for a meeting with Ontario Premier Doug Ford, Health Minister Christine Elliott, and Economic Minister Vic Fedeli to discuss the justification for the closures. We request an immediate meeting to discuss and justify the closure measures as they're related to the spread of COVID-19, the data points used to make the decision, the contact tracing results, the decision-making protocols, and plans for future measures should the number of new cases continue to grow. The letter reads in part, we will also request that messaging and fines for those who break quarantine rules and issue public health measures be severe and swift. I think this is interesting. Every time there's a criticism, there is that. Every time they say, we want the data and we want it now, somebody also says, but we think that people should be punished and blah, blah, blah. Like, public health should be paramount. Bringing the cases down is the most important thing, blah, blah. You want to bring the cases down, stop testing as much. But I think it's notable that every single person in the newspaper makes sure they balance their comment, right? They don't want one thing more than another. It's just as important to get the answers as it is to stop the virus. I just think it's notable. Back to this. To date, no known transmission of COVID-19 has been publicly ascribed to employee to customer or customer to customer transfer in Ottawa. Publicly released information has consistently suggested that the recent increase of person-to-person transmission has occurred largely at social gatherings and undisclosed activities, the letter reads. They don't know that. Bullshit. Back to this. These restrictions create a perception that businesses are unsafe, and that will only further undermine the efforts to instill customer confidence, even as our members follow public health recommendation protocols with absolute compliance, Kulowski wrote. An Ottawa City Councillor will be moving a motion Wednesday at City Council meeting calling on the Premier to reconsider the 28-day lockdown. West Carleton March Councillor Eli L. Chantiri, sorry if I got that wrong, criticized the Premier on Saturday for the short notice given to businesses in the capital before the shutdown came into effect. This is his tweet. He says, really, Doug Ford? You couldn't give restaurant owners a heads up, let them at least get by on the weekend? How many owners bought their stock of food to serve the public? They all overstocked for the weekend, and you only gave them 24 hours notice. I scroll down. Where's the evidence to show the restaurants are the cause for the extra spreading? He said, all of these places, they did everything they can all summer long in preparation for the season to be shut down for 28 days. I have to tell you, a number of them will not survive. He said he supports public health measures, to keep people safe, including enforcement and fines for businesses that don't follow the rules, but he said he wants to see proof that restaurants, bars, and gyms in Ottawa are contributing to COVID-19 infections. If evidence comes to us saying the restaurants and bars and gyms are the cause, of course we're going to support the decision, he said. I want my community to be safe, but I'd like to be able to defend that decision and say there's evidence telling us what the cause of the increase of cases is coming from, where the increase of cases is coming from. I think they don't know. They don't know. Here's the open letter, the full open letter. If you want to read it, it's in the link, in the description. And then the mayor backflips and says, yeah, I support those businesses. We need to know, right? Remember earlier when I said that the 95 nurses got laid off from the hospitals, the Newmarket Hospital, and then we got 95 new labor inspectors, right? Because they have to do stuff like this, right? 680 News is reporting Toronto Public Health conducted 46 compliance checks at establishments in typically crowded areas of the city over the long weekend. Health inspectors issued 16 warnings and laid 2 charges for non-compliance with the Reopening Ontario Act. There you go. Revenue stream, right? You got to pay that universal basic income somehow. Cash money. Cash money. Okay, Randy Hillier is saying, it's great to see members of our police begin standing up and speaking out. They're put in some of the hardest positions in mandating and enforcing these overreaching COVID policies our government has put in place. This is an interesting letter to read. I'm not going to read it right now, but there's very interesting highlights that Mark, who's an Ottawa police officer, gives. He talks about his daughter asking about being allowed to have Halloween. And he talks about seeing charter rights infringed upon daily. Is that what we're working for or what, right? So he's very, very concerned. Well, I'll read a part. Okay, he says, I see daily reminders of charter rights being trampled, Canadians being abused by government, and heavy-handed tactics being threatened and even used, $10,000 fines for having a gathering in your own home. I'm sickened by what I'm seeing. Not enough people, including people in my own profession, are asking questions. What is the point of all this? Does the charter even apply anymore? Do provincial emergency acts trump the charter now? Are we ever going to be allowed to govern our own health and assess our own risk? Or does the government do that for me now? These temporary measures and 14 days to flatten the curve have lasted 7 months now. Yeah. And she says, the sad reality is that I don't recognize my own country anymore. I have little respect for the sheeple I see blindly consuming the propaganda belt fed to them every day. And I am fearful, what kind of country my young girl is going to grow up in. Quote, Daddy, are they going to let us have Halloween? My daughter asked me a couple of days ago. Allow. That word echoed in my head for a few seconds. Rage rose, but I kept my cool before I answered. Honey, you're going to go out for Halloween. Daddy doesn't care what they say. I will go with you. Imagine a young kid wondering such things. What are we doing to our kids? If Doug Ford has any sand at all, he will start listening to common sense and not the unelected healthocrats that are the real most powerful people in this country, provinces and cities. And yeah, I share the same concerns that this officer shares. So thank you for your service, sir, and thanks for writing into the MPP, and thank you for Mr. Hillier for sharing that. It's very interesting what's happening, right? Here's some political news. I know a lot of people are complaining about being COVID heavy, but I don't think I can avoid it. Like, this is a part of the politics currently, and the people leading us are using it to further their agenda. And if I don't talk about it, I mean, well, the news is going to talk about it. PM blasts Tories for push to keep WeProbe alive, says government focused on COVID-19. See, even the government, Greg and I talked about this yesterday, Speaking Moistly is out. But even the government is talking, is saying, no, we can't talk about that. We've got to talk about COVID-19. It's the biggest threat. It's not the biggest threat. It's not. Here's Andrew Leslie, and Andrew Leslie used to be a former speaker, former member of parliament for Orleans and retired Lieutenant General of the Canadian Forces. I think he was a speaker. I read that he was a speaker. Other people say that he was a speaker. So he says, from parliamentary website, the official opposition's role is to oppose the government on a day-to-day basis and to hold them accountable. In this context, the opposition takes on an adversarial role, criticizing government legislation and actions. So they're doing their job, sir, and Justin Trudeau should do his and be transparent and accountable, right? But he doesn't like that. He doesn't like that, really. He says he likes to talk about that, but he isn't like that, right? He doesn't behave that way. He doesn't behave in a transparent and open way. I haven't dug deep on this story. I left it in because I wanted to just touch on it. But Alberta government says it's cutting up to 11,000 jobs at Alberta Health Services to save money. Health Minister Tyler Shando made the announcement at a news conference in Edmonton. And then apparently it's not doctors and nurses, but I don't know exactly what it is. There's something going on. Doctors and nurses or there's money leaving health in Alberta. But again, I don't know what to make of Jason Kenney. So, something to be aware of, right? Yesterday there was a Conservative press conference to talk about their plan to get of the WE documents. They're still rattling the saber, but I don't know that it's going to be fruitful, right? We'll see. We'll see how things play out, I suppose. But fundamentally, when all of this is taken together, how plausible is this plan? I don't know. I don't know if Doug Ford is genuine in talking about there's no hidden agenda. I'm just doing what the doctors say. I don't know if the doctors. How could 400 doctors come to a consensus and give that consensus to the premier, or even 100 doctors, right? 100 doctors in a room all agree based on what? What are they making the decisions on? There's a lot of questions, more questions than I have answers today, right? And well, I fear that that's going to be a continuing trend. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful